Before we get into Rajneesh proper, there's an old saying on the street, what goes around comes around, or as English poet John Donne said somewhat more eloquently a few years ago, he would lie with the dogs and must rise with the fleas. As the caller said, people said Jonestown wouldn't happen. I noticed that at Brown University recently, and Mae Brussel brought this up on her broadcast, they were taking a vote as to whether or not they were going to institute cyanide to be available for all of the students to commit suicide in the event of a nuclear war, and they voted for it. So Guyana today, Rhode Island tomorrow, where the day after that?
That's right. And to quote one last great thinker of our time, namely Pogo, we have met the enemy and he is us. I saw that exact same thing, and I thought of the difference between 20 years ago when people were out on the streets protesting the war, the young people, and I'm not that old myself, folks, but I'm just saying this, and not out of any kind of deep nostalgia. But 20 years ago, the young people were out on the streets protesting the war in Vietnam. Nowadays, the students are lining up to say that they want cyanide pills so they can opt out when the big casino goes down.
Commit revolutionary suicide, as Jim Jones talked about.
That's right. So perhaps maybe also when you talk about mind control, you have to talk on a larger basis, maybe not even an intentional basis in some cases, but maybe intentional, and about societal mental changes and the kind of society that is being built in some situations. Anyway, 415-941-2500 is the number.
Well, as far as Rajneesh goes...
Oh, yes, excuse me.
I don't personally know what to make of the Raj. Well, I'm very suspicious of them. The fact that they all tote guns around, and that makes me a little leery. On top of that, one of the things that's worth noting is the Rajneeshpuram is actually a municipality unto itself, and they have their own police force, and until quite recently, the Rajneeshpuram police force had access to the federal law enforcement computer banks about criminals, so that at least up until recently, they've been taken off it now, but they had computerized access to all of the federal government's information about criminals and people who had arrests and convictions. So what use they may have been making of that, anyone could tell. Anyone might guess. And of course, they also were seeking out transients recently, ostensibly to boost their electoral power. And I'm kind of shaky about the group. We'll see what develops. It certainly looks suspicious, and I think the caller was very shrewd to make that equation.
Something that we will undoubtedly keep our eagle eyes on up here.
Again, a speculative note, and all of these things I think are worth distinguishing from the hard documentation presented earlier.
Right. 415-941-2500 with lines open, and good evening, Cupertino. Welcome to Radio Free America.
Hello. I wanted to know your feelings on the infiltration of Asians in the Bay Area that are taking jobs and schooling away from people that have been paying taxes for a number of years.
Okay, well, caller, let me first get you to define what you mean by infiltration by Asians. Are you talking about immigrants?
Yes.
Legal immigrants?
Yes.
Okay. Well, if somebody is a legal immigrant and they are, in fact, working for a living, then aren't they, in fact, paying taxes?
Yeah, but let me give you an example. If I go to sign up for a college class, and not exactly legal aliens, but also illegal aliens signing up for school and taking the place of a class that maybe I wanted to take, and here I am paying taxes and working hard on the side, and I'm not getting out of it what I think I deserve. I'm not prejudiced or anything like that, but I think that, in fact, I heard the U.S. government has determined that the San Jose area is completely saturated by new coming Asians, and it's becoming out of control.
Well, if the situation really bothers you, could always move to Asia.
Take up the empty space that they've left behind. No, caller, I have to deal with this in a fairly serious manner. First of all, I think that a lot of the things that you're talking about are things that are quite often rumors, but have never actually been substantiated. I think that, in fact, if you look at it, that anybody who immigrates to this country legally, I think you have to admit, has as much of a right as any other citizen or person of similar status to the rights and privileges of our society, just like they have to pay taxes and all the other things. Now, as to illegal immigrants, people seem to have the idea that illegal immigrants come in and start getting on welfare and taking away jobs and things like that. There have been many congressional commissions, and they have all shown, and it can be cited if you want to go look in the congressional record on some of them, that in fact illegal aliens, first of all, they wind up, when they do wind up in the workforce, they're usually taking jobs no one else wants. They're paying taxes that they can't ever collect refunds on because they are illegal, and most of them will never get involved in any kind of civic activity where they, like welfare or school or anything where they have to show documentation, like a social security number or something, because of the fact of the great fear in the refugee communities and the illegal immigrant communities of being exposed. So I think you have to be very careful, caller, to go out and find out what the truth of these things are before you succumb to, as far as what I'm concerned, is pretty much a campaign of rumors without substantiation.
Well, I can give you just a really quick example. I was privileged to be signed up in a county-funded schooling project with job training and all that. It was for low-income people. I worked part-time all summer, so I qualified. And this particular situation was, I guess they had had to fill their quota on Asians, and they picked about 25 students, 4 Asians, and the Asians were the first ones to drop out because of the language barrier. They couldn't handle the class, and now these spaces are which I consider pretty valuable, are now gone because.
But caller, I don't see the connection there at all. I'm sorry, between people signing up for class and dropping out, and some kind of an institutionalized plan to infiltrate, Asians into society.
Well, see, another thing, caller, that I would add is that the large number of Asians coming into the United States now is in no way is not unconnected to American foreign and economic policy. Not only 2 Asian wars in Korea and Vietnam, but both those events have had a lot to do with the Asian influx into this country, but also the increasing exodus of U.S. industry and the involvement of American industry with Asia, and specifically here in the Santa Clara Valley, where electronics is considered the bread and butter of everybody. So many of the electronics companies do their assembly overseas. It seems to me that it's a little bit hypocritical for Americans to wage war in Asia, to move their industries over there, to take advantage of the cheap labor over there in order to reap enormous profits and achieve an affluent lifestyle, and then turn around and complain about the Asians in the country.
Okay, one last thing, caller, and because this is not really on the subject and we should move on, but let me just say one thing to you, caller, which is that I don't personally fault you, because it is a thing that I've heard a lot of people fall into, and I think a lot of it is just sort of rumor. But what I would suggest is that, in fact, the people that you should be upset about is not the Asian immigrants, most of whom are probably in no better shape or much worse shape than you are, but the people who are in control of the industries and the governmental machinery that has, either in the country that the Asians come from or here in the United States, has forced them into the situations. But again, what I'm trying to say is that it's always the small people, you and me and everybody else who works for a living, that wind up getting played off against each other on issues of race and religion, whereas that's not really the problems.
Right. I didn't. If there's any illegal alien Asians out there, I'm not meaning to be prejudiced. I just want to know, what's fair for the American people and what's good for the American people,
Well, as soon as somebody joins the country, they are Americans, and that's how it works. Anyway, we have to move along, caller, but again, I would just suggest to, make sure that you can get facts on things, because a lot of people like to pass rumors along, and a lot of people don't know where those rumors come from, and a lot of times they're just not true, okay?
I was hoping maybe you had some facts.
Well, those are facts. The fact that Asians are not taking jobs away, particularly from Americans, certainly not high-paid ones. Not illegal immigrants aren't anyway. Legal immigrants maybe, but that's how it works. As far as they're not taking welfare away, there have been congressional studies, that they're putting more into the system, the illegal immigrants, than they're taking out. Okay. So anyway, got to move on. Thanks for the call.
Thanks.
Okay, back to the phones again with a line open, 415-941-2500. And good evening, Cupertino. Welcome to Radio Free America.
Thank you. This is a great show, as usual.
Thank you.
I wanted to tie in a story that I heard on KPFA this morning about DES, that they found that the women who took DES when they're pregnant, their daughters, they first found out that DES was harmful when their daughters developed cancer of the vagina, and now they found that 22 years after women take DES, that they're dying of cancer of, now I forget what it was, but I think it's like cancer of the liver or something like that.
although I should say, I think I've heard some of these stories, and I think that there's a higher proportion is dying from cancer who took DES, but that it's not like they all are. It's like instead of 2 out of 1,000, it's 2.5 to 3 out of 1,000, or something like that.
Right. Maybe more. Maybe this would be something that someone with perverse control of things might want to target a population rather than a specific individual with something like that. But it's interesting though that it plateaus at 22 years. It's kind of interesting that a disease would time itself like that. Also, I wanted to note that hormones in meat, are routinely given to cattle, and any kind of animal that's used for fattening, they give growth hormones to, and hormones are like timing mechanisms for the body. And so, if you can regulate a body's timing mechanism, it sort of figures to me that you can also set a time bomb in them, because you can set up like well, I don't know. It's possible.
Well, no, I understand what you're saying, Caller. Yeah, I would have to say that that's a kind of an indeterminate and general way to do it. Is to put burger bombs into the body politic.
Well, the thing that I'd like to make is food additives do have an effect on the human consciousness, and this has been proven. Many growth hormones that are added to meat and chicken and so forth, and chemicals, particularly things like monosodium glutamate and so forth, do have an effect on human consciousness. So in that sense, I guess, could be said to relate to mind control. And of course, many chemicals, the whole politics of poison, I guess you could say, with regard to additives, all of the various poisons arriving in the environment, of course, does have a political side. Specifically, though, I'd like to know how you would like to tie this into mind control, and also encourage other listeners to stick to the subject here, because it's
right. The way I tie this in is through enough of these different things that you don't have to kill Martin Luther Kings or something. You can actually, they can influence people in an adverse way. They can add pressure through stress, through targeting a certain population with all the, like the poor with a anti-welfare type bill and stuff like this. And if they trigger it all at the same time, and they routinely do not give correct nutritional information to people, places like McDonald's or other places like that tend to flourish. And
well, I agree with that. Again, my point would just be that it's an awfully broad and general way.
Another thing to tie this in would be also that nerve energy is an important denominator in our body. We work off electrical impulses to a great extent.
Mm-hmm.
And ions in the air, they found that positive ions in the air and negative ions in the air have two different mood producing abilities. And also in Brain Mind Bulletin, which is edited by Marilyn Ferguson, who wrote some best-selling novel about how things were going to get better or something like that.
The Aquarian Conspiracy.
Right. She mentioned that feeling tones were the way that your brain stores information. So if you can affect moods through bad nutrition, and if you can affect moods through ions, and or like some sort of bug in someone's head, which would produce electrical changes, then it'd be there's a lot of possibilities if you can manipulate someone's moods. What I'm saying is that your brain stores information regarding the feelings. And if you can control someone who's to make them depressed 100% of the time, then they don't have access to the information that they've stored when they're happy, and they do have access to the information when they're depressed.
Okay.
Someone like Candy Jones, she might have led a very happy life for a period of time, and then boom, she was compelled to live life in a very dangerous situation. Another book that ties in, I think, is Linda Lovelace's Ordeal, which she pretty much blows the lid off the porn racket by showing that a lot of these women are compelled at gunpoint to perform before films, and they're made to have set smiles on their faces. Okay,
well, again, now before we get off too deeply into this, I'm going to have to wrap that up.
Okay, I'll take everything off the air, but I think I've said what I need to say.
Okay, thanks
a lot for your show.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
I have some doubts about the Linda Lovelace thing. There was recently just a congressional thing where a bunch of women who are pornographic movie actresses all got together and said, they don't do that to us. You know, we're doing this because we like doing it and it makes us a good living. So, I mean, obviously they're not all probably feeling that way.
In addition to that caller provided us with the pun of the year, perhaps, but let's move on.
Okay, back to the telephones again, 415-941-2500. Good evening, Los Gatos, and welcome to KFJC.
Hey, I just want to know, like, who do CIA guys think they are? Totally poisoning the minds of people and telling them to commit suicide in 10 years. I mean...
Well, I think that's a good question. Now, who the heck do they think they are?
Call them up and ask them.
That's right.
Well, no, I mean, isn't there somebody in Washington with enough power that if we can prove it to them that all this stuff, you know...
Well, this is one of the reasons, Colin. This is indeed not meaning to make light.